It's just exceeded all my expectations.
Business at Evergreen Apothecary, previously just a medical marijuana dispensary, has more than quadrupled.
More than a month after recreational pot sales became legal, people are still lining up at the door to get their hands on this stuff. This place packed at 10 o'clock when doors opened.
In fact, this pot shop averages about 500 customers a day. And the state of Colorado is reaping the benefits as well. The state will collect about $184 million in tax revenues in the first 18 months of recreational pot sales. Here's Colorado's plan for spending that money. $40 million automatically goes to public school construction. That was mandated by voters. Then the governor wants to spend about $85 million on youth prevention and substance abuse treatment, $12.4 million on public health, about $3 million on law enforcement and public safety, and nearly $2 million on industry oversight.
I don't think the people who are buying marijuana want the tax money to be used to discourage adults from buying marijuana.
While not everyone agrees on how that money should be spent, and although still early, there's no denying the apparent economic boost
20, 40, 60, 80.
that's come from recreational pot sales. Ana Cabrera, CNN, Denver.
It's interesting. Being out here in California, people talk about this all the time. There are many states where this is already allowed, medicinal marijuana use. What do doctors really typically most likely prescribe marijuana for? Are there certain conditions? And how do people know what those conditions are?
Well, the main indications for using medicinal cannabis are to decrease nausea and to stimulate appetite. It also can be used for chronic pain. It's particularly good for neuropathic pain, the sort of pins and needles that the opiates aren't very good at treating. It's also a good muscle relaxer, and it's an anti-inflammatory and a free radical scavenger, and it also helps quite a bit with autoimmune disorders, sort of regulating the immune system. So it can be used for a whole host of medical indications and psychiatric indications as well.
There was a recent study, final question, a recent study that talked about marijuana use in young people, and saying if you use it as a young person, it was more likely to have longer-term impact in terms of memory degradation and things like that. Didn't see that so much as in adults. But Dr. Holland,
right.
I mean, what worries you the most about all this? Are there certain concerns?
Yeah, there are definitely concerns. One thing is that, kids in their late teens, early 20s, their brains are really vulnerable and susceptible to psychiatric illness. It's a particularly delicate time in brain formation. So, one good thing about regulating cannabis is that you would actually potentially have fewer children using. I mean, right now, you ask any kid, and it's pretty easy for them to get pot. Dealers don't card. But if things are regulated, the hope is that it would actually have fewer children using. I mean, you can look at other countries like the Netherlands, where actually they've got much better statistics on, teen drug use than we do.
As Colorado grapples with an exploding marijuana industry that is now legal, I want you to touch them together. Police here are now redoubling the fight against something that will always be illegal, driving while stoned.
We teach them to look at certain things, and it is kind of an elimination process.
Colorado wants to train 300 officers to spot some of the telltale symptoms of marijuana impairment, including body tremors, wobbly balance, and a big giveaway, the eyes.
What I'm going to do is I'm just going to check your pupils, okay?
Those dilated pupils now showing up in a new state ad campaign. In this one, a pot user is installing his TV but gets distracted by the munchies. The ads are funny, but researchers say the problem is serious. Columbia University studied thousands of fatal car crashes in 6 states. Over a decade, they found the number of drivers testing positive for marijuana nearly tripled. Have you ever driven high?
Have I? Sometimes.
Some marijuana users believe they are perfectly safe behind the wheel.
You're a little more cautious, because you're probably going to be more alert. You ain't dizzy or drowsy as you will be with alcohol.
Police don't buy it.
If it slows down your reaction time by even a second, 1 second on the road at 70 miles an hour is the difference between life or death.
The new slogan here is a warning. Drive high, get a DUI. Clayton Sandell, ABC News, Denver.
Hey.
Denver native Brian Doyle used to dread being without marijuana. If he didn't smoke a joint, he wouldn't be able to fall asleep. If he didn't smoke a joint, he would have no appetite.
Was it more important than food to you?
Yes.
Was it more important than most things to you?
Yes.
Weed took over the 27-year-old's life. He had often heard that it was no big deal, that it wasn't even addictive. But
were you addicted to marijuana?
Yes.
Perfect.
The National Institute on Drug Abuse says about 1 out of 11 pot users become addicted. Brian Doyle decided he needed help and got clean after treatment at the Cedar Center at the University of Colorado Hospital. The executive director of this rehabilitation facility says the potency of today's pot makes the problem worse.
The concentration of THC in marijuana today is 30-40% in a typical smoked marijuana versus 3 or 4% THC concentration of the 60s and 70s.
Other drugs, including alcohol and nicotine, have higher addiction rates. But there is serious concern among those in the substance abuse field that Colorado's new marijuana law will substantially increase the number of marijuana addicts.
I think we'll see more people using it on a consistent basis.